Hey, it's Em, and we are going to talk about Toledo, the second episode in the vampire Lestat. Lestat's band members now know that he is a vampire. They're not super happy about it. I shouldn't say. Some of them are quite cool with it, and at least one of them is very angry because he understands that vampire equal murderer. And he chooses to leave, whereas the rest decide to stay. And at least one of them was kind of hoping that Lestat and he could have some kind of intimate encounter, but Lestat lets him down by telling him he doesn't date his band members. I assume that this will come back, that Alex, the musician who left, will, that there will be some kind of circling back to that. This, of course, in my recollection, does not happen in the books. As far as I recall, the band does not ever realize that vampires exist, and that Lestat is, in fact, the vampire Lestat. But, what have you. We get a lot of time with Lestat and his mother, who I think in this one they're calling Gabriella. She's called Gabrielle in the books. Yes, she grew up in Naples in the books. Her name probably was Gabriella growing up in Italy, but it wasn't uncommon in those times to change your name to fit the norms of the country you moved to, just like Queen Caterina of Spain became Catherine of Aragon when she married Henry VIII. The relationship stuff between Lestat and his mother, I assume they're doing it for, shock value or something. In the books, vampires don't have sex. Intimacy for them comes from sharing blood. So we're, seeing them kind of hanging out. And to be honest, it strikes me as more awkward for Lestat than it is for his mom, which does make sense. In the books, Gabrielle she is very aloof and remote. She is well educated. She came from a wealthy family in Italy. It's never explained how she ended up married to this marquis in France. My guess is she brought a dowry. She was probably the youngest of any number of family members, and they sold her off so she could have the title of marquise. It's also very possible, this is just my headcanon, that because she and Lestat are very similar in temperament, she was wild, and they kind of punished her by sending her off to the fin vivants, as we say, to, get her away from the rest of the family because she was probably going to bring some kind of dishonor on the family. So that's a real possibility for how Gabrielle ended up where she did, considering she is the only one in the family who can read, and she spends most of her time reading books, which Lestat hates because he understands that that's kind of taking her away from him and the family. He is the seventh son, the third surviving son of 8. 8 is a recurring number in this episode too. We have the 8 wolves. We have that Gabrielle had 8 children, only 3 of who survived. We start with side 8 of the albums. We're jumping around in this failures collection of albums, by the way. I believe Lestat even says that they kill 8 family members after he turns Gabrielle, and they return to the family estate, which does not happen in the books. In the books, Gabrielle has gone to Paris to die. Lestat comes to see her and turns her. They stay in the area because Lestat's paramour, Nicola, or Nikki, is still in the area. And also, that's kind of the point they encounter Armand and the Children of Darkness, which is a whole other thing that I assume we will get to. They don't go back to the family estate. They eventually take off looking for Marius. They go over to Greece and Egypt. Lestat gets letters from his lawyer saying, oh, there's a revolution in France. I will let you know if it comes as far as your family's estate, because they are titled nobility. But they're also, in the books, very poor. This, table of food would not have been in the books. In fact, Lestat's whole purpose in life is to hunt and provide for his family, because none of the rest of the family has the gumption to go out and bring home anything to eat. To get back to Gabrielle, Lestat isn't entirely sure how to relate to her when they're both mortal, and it's because she's very aloof. She spends most of her time reading. She doesn't like to be touched, he says this very clearly. So he's always surprised if she touches him on the shoulder or pats him on the hand, which she does after he's injured with the wolves and he goes and hides in his room for however long. She does not come tend to him. She sends servants in to clean him up, shave him, get him presentable so that he can go get his wolf fur cape. And I know we're getting the wolf. You see him wearing it in this episode. I guess it's more like a stole. I should have put on my red velvet cloak. In the book, he gets this red velvet cloak that is lined in the fur of the wolves he has killed and saved the village from. And, it's this awkward situation for him growing up, because he comes from the titled family of the area, but most of the merchants in the village have a lot more money. We get a hint of the whole Lestat going to the monastery to learn story in this episode. In the book, he goes when he's about 12. His mother actually insists that he be allowed to go down to the monastery to learn to read and write and all these things. And Lestat loves it so much that a month in, he's like, I'm going to be a monk. And then his family comes and drags him home because that's not acceptable for people of their status. Ostensibly, though, as the third son, it wouldn't be an issue, really. It's really that they can't afford to buy him the rank that would be befitting to their family's name. He would be a poor monk, and they can't have that. They can't buy him a bishopric or, the title of cardinal or anything, because just like with military offices, you kind of paid to play. How high you rose depended on how much you could pay, and they can't pay anything. So the only thing that gets Lestat into the monastery is his mother selling some of her jewelry that she brought, some family heirloom jewelry from Italy. And she uses some more to get him his hunting dogs and his horse and things, because she kind of guides him towards becoming the hunter that he becomes. She guides him towards raising these dogs and establishing a really strong hunting kennel at their home. And she's kind of giving him as much as she can under what's acceptable for their station, I guess, and what they can manage. We know that Lestat's father doesn't die in the revolution, because we know from Interview with the Vampire that Lestat brings his blind father to Louisiana. Now, I don't think they did that in this series, but in the books, that's what happens. His father's the only one left, and he brings him with him to the New World. Because Lestat, at the end of the day, does have filial feelings for his parents and a sense of responsibility and a sense of honor. And I guess this sort of going back to the family and just killing them all was supposed to be more cinematic, maybe, or I don't know. I'm not sure what we're supposed to take away from that as far as his character goes. I could definitely see Gabrielle doing it, but the Lestat they're crafting with this story is a little, less sympathetic, maybe. And yet we see that he has these moments, like when he serenades Louis at the concert. You can see he's like insanely jealous when they have the discussion with the attorneys, because we get some Louis in this episode. We get the understanding that Louis is now a real estate magnate. He's, buying and selling these buildings and whatnot. He owned the hotel that Lestat trashed, and he's looking for compensation there. But of course, Lestat's just still mad about the book. And Louis like, that wasn't me, that was Daniel, and you've got Daniel in your entourage, so, But, yeah, Lestat still has a lot of jealousy, a lot of strong emotions that he's not sure where to put them or how to release them. The music seems to be working for him, I guess. Louis and Daniel have a discussion, and Louis reiterates that he would rather Daniel had not published this book. The Talamasca published it, apparently. The Talamasca being that secret society that follows vampires and witches and things. I did not watch the Mayfair Witches series. I liked The Witching Hour. I liked Lasher. By the time Mona was like the main character, though, I really didn't like Mona. So I just quit being interested, and I just wasn't interested enough to watch the series. So I'm probably missing some context if these things are meant to dovetail. Let me know in the comments if there's something I should know from the other series. But we hear that Talbot is dead, which surprised me because David Talbot's pretty integral to the books. I mean, I don't know if that's a lie or somebody doesn't have all the information, or if they literally changed that. Do we have Aaron Leitner? We clearly have Raglan James, which, obviously they have to set that up. A lot of this episode is Lestat and Gabriella doing their thing, going to strip clubs, having dinner at an Italian restaurant. Scenes from an Italian restaurant. Where's Billy Joel? So Louis and Daniel have a I don't want to say a moment. They go and they meet at a restaurant, and then Daniel kind of hands him off to Raglan James and whoever's with Raglan. And Louis not impressed with that, but Daniel was like, I promised to introduce you. And then Daniel dips, and Raglan is asking Louis to help them get rid of some of the vampires because apparently there are just too many now. He's like, well, you single-handedly killed off like however many in like the UAE or whatever. And yeah, those were the ones I think that were coming to kill Louis after the book revealed so much about vampires and their existence and whatever. So Louis has, I assume, been holding his own, and at this point maybe most of the vampires are not willing to approach him on that front. I think they've pivoted and focused on Lestat more because he's definitely far more visible at this point, even if he's pretending to the world that it's a gimmick. The idea is that we're at the point where the vampires are reproducing at too high a rate and they need to be culled. And if you know from the books, we'll get there. Akasha will take care of it to a large degree. It's interesting that Daniel's still having kind of conflicting feelings about Armand and his relationship with Armand because he was made by Armand, which in the books is true, but obviously, first of all, in the books, Daniel's much younger. Second of all, Daniel is, I think, in the books, mentally ill, if not diagnosed, then displayed as, portrayed as. But he kind of comes and goes through Armand's, orbit. He's constantly relapsing into his addictions, and Armand's constantly having to go get him and, take care of him. In the books, once Daniel is a vampire, he is almost the village idiot of the vampires, which is not meant to be disparaging. It's just that he's the one sitting in a corner kind of just laughing maniacally at things or whatever. Like, he's off in his own world in the books, and he's quite entertaining, and it's just kind of this really nice contrast between his just exuberance and Armand's very, like, placid, stoic personality. We're not getting that quite, at least not drawn as, it's not as big a contrast, because yes, we do get the sense that Daniel's aiming to live the rock star life. He wants the money, he wants, he's got a swagger, and Armand being much older and again much more, I don't know, settled. Maybe every vampire goes through a wild youth phase, right? They're angry adolescents. Lestat is still in his, for some reason, his perpetual child, but the rest of them kind of age out of behaving this way, maybe. The changes are interesting. I don't love all of them. Again, Gabrielle in the books I can respect, because she gets the powers of being a vampire, and she dips because she spent her life in a world where, as a woman, she had really no power, no say. She had to marry and go where she was told. She's squeezing out babies, whatever. Not happy with her lot because she's smarter and, again, better educated and everything else than all the men around her, and yet she's just expected to sit there and be ornamental or something, or, subservient even. And so the minute she's like, oh, dude, I can write my own ticket now, she's off. Like, she stays with Lestat for a while, but it's more for his sake than hers, because she's ready to book it, like, almost immediately. Once she's learned what she can and can't do, like her powers, right? And how to feed and, where to... She likes to just bury herself wherever she is. Like, she'll dig herself a hole and go to bed, like, in the ground a lot of times when she's traveling. Things like that. Like, could totally respect book Gabrielle. I haven't seen enough of this Gabriella, maybe. But so far, I just don't like her. I just don't. I think she brings out the worst in Lestat instead of the best, sadly. in the series. In the books, she's just such her own person that Lestat still, like, they've gotten closer because they understand each other more, and they've gotten closer because of the additional blood tie of him having made her a vampire. But of course, in the books, they can't hear each other's thoughts because the maker and the fledgling, that, like, connection is severed. At the point in the books where he makes Nikki a vampire too, Nikki and Gabrielle are able to communicate, and Lestat feels like a third wheel, like he's left out here, because he's like, these two people who are the most important people in my lives can talk to each other, like, without words, and I can't. I'm not in on it, which is his least favorite thing in the world, to be not in on it. Now, I did like that Gabrielle seemed to approve of Louis, I guess, in a physical appreciation way. She's like, I can see why you gave him a daughter, stuff like that. I was like, oh, that's, I guess, kind of nice. It was interesting that she remarked on it, that she could appreciate Lestat's taste, I guess. Literally, figuratively. I don't know that we furthered the plot a whole lot here. Again, it's jumping around. We start with album 8, and then we're like on album, 12 or 16 or whatever. Like, this is not going to be like a cohesive chronological thing. This is going to be jumping around to flashbacks and whatnot. And, okay, that's fine. At some point, I assume we'll have all the pieces and the full picture. But for now, it's just kind of these bits and pieces and these, it's just scenes. It's just it's just scenes. There's not a lot of emotional development going on here, sadly, which is kind of the whole point of the Vampire Lestat, is we see where he starts, we see how he grows, we see where he gets better? I don't know. Like, does he get better? Does he get worse? And now that I've babbled for 25 minutes, I will call it, and until next time, take care.